You are listening to Able Radio, simplifying productivity for small business owners everywhere. If you are looking for 1% improvements that add up to big results, this is the place for you. Every week, we learn about simple systems and tools that will help you build the business and life you've always wanted. Now here's your host, Zachary Sexton.
This is a rebroadcast of episode 8 of Able Business Radio, Sexy Evernote Settings with Stacey Harmon. There are a couple reasons why I'm rebroadcasting. One, it was one of the better episodes we've had to date. I think if you could listen and absorb the information that we go through on how to set up this powerful tool effectively, you will be ahead of 9 out of 10 Evernote users. 2, Stacey is doing a free training, a live training tomorrow. I'm going to be her co-host. I'm going to introduce her as well as help her field questions at the very end. But she hasn't done this live training in a couple months since her original Radical Productivity with Evernote course came out. So I wanted to put this in your guys' ears. So if you are interested in learning more about Evernote, you can sign up for the webinar. I'll make sure to put that in the show notes, but it is tomorrow, August 3rd. Thursday, 5 p.m. Central Time. So if you're able to make that, that would be a wonderful thing for you to sign up for. So now, the episode with Sexy Settings and Miss Stacey Harmon. Thank you so much for tuning in to Able Business Radio. I have my good friend, fellow Austinite, fellow tiny house lover, fellow kombucha lover, fellow apparently Florida Keys. I was just telling Stacey about Nikita and I's spring break plans, and she likes the Florida Keys too. Fellow Vespa lover, fellow Evernote lover, Stacey Harmon. How's it going, Stacey?
It's going really well. Great to be here with you.
It's creepy how much we have in common. Oh, wait a minute. Getting things done, lover, productivity lover.
I know. Productivity geeks unite.
Dog lover.
Minimalism, all that fun stuff.
Minimalism lover.
So great.
We're just wired the same.
We could probably talk for like a whole hour just on that stuff and not even get to Evernote.
Yeah, well, I'd be fine with that. That's cool with me. No, we won't. Well, we will actually talk about the thing that we came together to talk about, which is Evernote. You are a certified Evernote consultant. That's how I first met you. You had a talk at Evernote HQ in Austin, not the one in Redwood, which is their official headquarters, but a very large center in Austin where a lot of developers are. And you were speaking about simple systems for business, I believe, and how to create them in Evernote. Is that right, or am I getting the
I think
talk?
we were also talking about that was going paperless too.
It was going
Evernote,
paperless.
Right?
It
Yeah,
was going paperless.
Paperless with Evernote.
And
I think you walked away with a couple good ideas.
I
you
walked
were
away.
inspired to
I was
photograph
so
your
jacked.
receipts, right?
I was so excited, and actually, it's funny. It's the same time of year, I think. So we've known each other about a year, only a year. That's crazy.
Hey, happy friendship anniversary.
Friendship-versary. And what I was so jacked about, what I was so excited about when you were talking about going paperless, there was a lot you talked about in your presentation, but there was one small little example where you're saying, oh, you know what I do with all my receipts? I just email them to this one folder in Evernote. If that's a physical receipt, I take a picture using the Scannable app, and then I send it. If it was an email receipt, I then I just forward it to Evernote and put it in that way. And I was like, oh my gosh. Because I had just been spending, probably a month procrastinating because I really didn't want to do it. And then hours and hours and hours searching for all of my receipts to try to do my taxes for that year. As a self-employed person, you gotta find all those expenses to reduce your tax burden. And I was like, never again. And you spoke and you showed me that little trick of the trade, and I now have a very full 2016 folder. Let me look at the 2016 folder. Yes,
Could we say you're actually excited to do your taxes?
No.
That would be a little bit of a stretch, right?
That would be a stretch.
However, is it going to be an easier process for you this year?
We won't get into that.
So did I help you? Is my point.
You helped me. You
Okay.
helped me. I elected to be a corporation accidentally when I wanted to be self-employed again. So I've got some
Okay.
stuff to
Well,
do.
at least
I just
here,
found
let's
that out
focus
this
on the
morning.
positive. Everything's centralized, right? Everything is
I've
centralized.
got 97 receipts in 2016. I've already got 32 receipts for 2017 because I'm doing more and more expenses because I'm working for myself rather than working with a part of a larger organization, which I was before. So I at least have that. So I'm not so up, the creek that I'm talking about. So
Well, I mean, the basic point behind that I advocate, and I think you agree with, is you've got to digitize it and centralize it. And Evernote's a brilliant tool for doing that. So I find Evernote and its auxiliary apps really useful in setting the stage for, might I say, radical productivity, right? So that's my view on it, and that's what I shared, and I'm glad that you applied it, and hopefully and what I've found too is it compounds, it gets easier over time. So you've been doing it for a year, you've got those receipts now centralized, and now you're in the habit of doing it this year.
Yeah.
So no matter what your situation, at least you have one place to go. It saves you a lot of effort and stress, just the mental stress to think about having to do it. You're less likely to delay getting started on it because you don't have to go through that process of figuring out where all that paper is and collecting it and putting it into one location. You don't have to search through your email. You don't have to search through your hard drive, or through Google Drive. You know exactly where it is.
Very much. Another thing that helped out when, so after you talked, I ran up to you like a creep, said, "Oh my gosh, you're the best, and thank you for this." And I invited you to go on first a webinar, and then you created some training actually for the company that I worked with on Evernote. And every time that I connected with you since, I was learning one thing after the next. And the biggest thing, the biggest breakthrough that I had was learning to set up the Evernote the best way possible, because the way I had Evernote before, I used it mainly for journaling, and that was fine because I knew where my journaling basically folder was, and I created a new note, and I used Text Expander to automate a new template of it, although you told me how I could actually use a Evernote template to do the same thing. And Text Expander, for those who don't know, is a tool where you enter a keyboard shortcut and it pops out more text. So for example, if I want to date my journal entry, I do semicolon JD and it pulls out the actual date. And I have a template for how I journal every single day. And that's how I was using Evernote, but it was kind of a black box to me. I put some reference material in there, but I depended a little bit more on Dropbox and my hard drive, and it wasn't as effective as I think it could have been, because I knew how to search and I relied on the search, but I didn't know how to find things any other ways. And I relied on shortcuts and it just, I didn't always trust it. And the way you showed me to set up my settings, both on the account level, so this is when you sign up for Evernote, you have some account settings that you need to think about, and on my desktop level, and then eventually on my phone, I have an iPhone 6, you showed me how to set it up in a way that was so much more clear to me. And I'm trying to get the excitement out, because settings on applications don't seem like the most interesting of ways to discussions to have. But I swear, once you make these little tweaks, and it'll only take a minute. If you're listening to this in the car as you're going along, you could likely remember the settings. If not, go back. If not, I'll put as many as I can in the show notes where we can where you can go back and kind of look at this, maybe do some screenshots and put it in there, because it's not hard. It's not very difficult at all to get these settings right. But if you don't, you don't end up trusting the tool, and then you don't end up using the tool as often. So I'm going to give you
and I also think that the reality is your use case for like what you just said about your Evernote story is very, very common. Most people are dabbling in it. They get it as a note-taking app. They understand it. It proves functional. Its search is amazing, so they can rely on that. But the reality is most people are underutilizing Evernote. And when you start to learn what some of these, like I like to call them magical things that Evernote can do, you start to go, wow, that's really cool. And then you start to dabble with it. And then you're like, oh, it didn't work like she showed it to me, or like the Evernote little demo on their blog post showed. And the reality is it's because you haven't combed through your settings and set up the foundation to make that stuff just magically work. So I like to talk about settings as like the sexy part of Evernote because it's what enables all of that Evernote sexiness and magic to happen. And it's so important that I developed an entire module about the settings in this course that I've just created, because it really empowers the functionality of your Evernote account and makes it something that just works and makes it something that is actually very delightful to you. So there's a lot of areas in this very robust application that you want to look at least once. And then I also advise when Evernote does like a major update to their apps that you review that. So they've just updated the mobile Apple iOS app. And so looking at your settings when they make a large change like that is always a good idea as well. And then you'll have a lovely experience with Evernote because it's just going to work as you would expect it. And you can really benefit from all these little bells and whistles that they offer.
Wonderful. I am just logging into my online Evernote, which I very rarely use. I think probably most people use the desktop application and the phone application more. So I'm logging in there now so we could talk about some of those settings to make sure that everything is done right.
Can I set the stage? Let me set the stage about the settings, because when you sign into, say, Microsoft Word, that's going to have settings as well. But when you sign into Microsoft Word, you only have to go to one place to set up the settings. Evernote, because it's a cloud-based application, is going to have multiple locations that you're going to want to configure settings. What people don't really immediately recognize with Evernote is that it's actually a suite of applications. And there are settings that impact your overall account, no matter where you use Evernote. But each location that you use Evernote also has local application settings that you want to look at. So that knowledge alone can be very helpful and can be one of the light bulb moments that can help you to get organized with Evernote. And then to take things a step further, Evernote, particularly on Mac and iOS, offers some additional pieces of software that aren't part of the Evernote application, notably Scannable on your iPhone and Sketch on your computer, as well as a piece of hardware that's pretty amazing called the ScanSnap, the Evernote ScanSnap. So those things alone can start to amplify the amount of places that you want to check your settings. So you can see why it gets a little complicated and why people don't natively do it. But as you've mentioned, you just have to have the right guide to look at it once, understand what the setting impacts, which is, how I like to teach. It's like, I don't want to tell you just to make this setting change. I want to tell you why that impacts and what that will help you to do in the application. And you'll find that you're going to start to use the app more and more because you understand what's controlling your end result.
Wonderful. It's a big insight that I didn't have before I knew you. So let's use that knowledge.
I like to start with the web settings, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the web settings. So you can access Evernote from anywhere that you are, as long as you have access to a web browser on your computer. And that is where Evernote houses your full account settings. So it's called the web account settings. This impacts your entire experience with the application. And there's a couple of key pieces of data in there that you're going to want to look at and make sure that you have incorporated into your system. So the first is that your email address, assuming you are a paying member of Evernote, whether it's at the plus or premium level, you're going to have the ability to generate and create notes simply by forwarding an email into Evernote. And that's one of the key factors to centralizing your expenses, as Zack has learned. You get a lot of receipts and such within Evernote. And so you want to be able to forward those to Evernote. And your unique email address is housed in your account web settings. So you want to go to your account settings, and you want to save that unique email address into your contacts, wherever you keep those.
And just to note, for people out there, this is going to Evernote.com and signing in. And one thing that, even though I've signed in multiple times on Evernote.com, that catches me up is they're trying to get new people to sign up. So it's very easy to sign up for a new account. So if you're a new member, put your name and your email in and it'll sign up. But it's very tiny in the upper right-hand corner is where you sign in if you already have an Evernote account. So
that's a great point.
Log in there. Don't mess up like I actually just did for the X time. And then I believe the first thing that you go, it's a thing called the.
You go to the lower left hand. You go to the lower left hand corner and go to your little avatar or the initial for your name and access the settings. Yeah, that's where you want to be.
And it's under account summary. If you scroll down, it says email notes to, and then you've got this special email that you copy. If you're using Gmail or Outlook or whatever you're using, just create a new contact. My contact's called Send to Evernote. There's a lot of other tools that do this too. I've got Send to Trello, Send to OmniFocus, Send to those are the things I'm thinking of off the top of my head. But Evernote is one of those that will do that, and it does a very good job of getting the formatting halfway decent, and definitely getting all the words that are in that email, and that's how I send my receipts. That's what we talked about at the beginning, my enlightenment moment when it came to being a small business owner and collecting my receipts in one area, using that tool.
Yeah. And then there's also the other area I really like you to focus on in terms of your web settings is the security area. So a lot of people are concerned about security. And if you want to set up two-step verification, this is where you would do it. So looking under the security, in the security summary, is a very important area to kind of look at for those that are interested in that. You also want to confirm that your email addresses reflect the email addresses associated with your account reflect what you would like people to see when you email notes out to them. So it is possible to share notes that are in your account with people outside of Evernote, and you want to be sure that that's coming from the email address they're expecting. So you have to make sure that that email account is associated with your account, and you would do that here in the web settings. And then the third area that I really want you to look at is connected services. And this is where a lot of that magic happens. And just to reiterate, we're talking about having a paid Evernote level here. So some of them will work at the free level, but really the power and feature set is at the premium and paid, premium and business level. Sorry, premium and plus level. And there's two in particular that I really advocate you look at. If you're a Google Apps user, you want to, or have a Google account, connect your services, because there's a great integration between Google and Evernote that allows you to not have to house all your data in Evernote. Some of it can live on Google Drive, and you can just reference it in Evernote. And I think this is an area that Evernote's going to continue to invest in, is their integration with Google Drive. So absolutely connect the two accounts. There's some great things that can come from that. And also LinkedIn. So if you have a LinkedIn account and you want to benefit from one of the best, slickest features that Evernote offers, which is their business card scanning, and have it auto send people a LinkedIn request, you need to connect your LinkedIn account. And this is the simplest place to do it because it will impact your experience on all your devices. You can also do it at your local device level, but you might as well just do it while you're here. So those are the three areas that I think are most important to absolutely look at. There's some other less important tweaks that you can make here, adding an avatar, et cetera, that will impact your overall experience. But those are the key ones to start with.
All right. Well, we'll just stick with the high level ones. And yeah, that LinkedIn tip there will come in handy if you're collecting business cards and you want to scan them in and have those connections automatically done.
Automatically. Yeah, that's about right. And then from there, Evernote offers desktop applications for the Mac and for the Windows machines. So you're going to want to go to evernote.com/download, evernote.com/download, and make sure that you are downloading the full desktop application. It'll auto-sense if you're on a Windows or a Mac machine. This is the most powerful way to interact with Evernote on a day-to-day basis. When you're really a fluent Evernote user, you're not using it in the web interface. You're using it on the desktop. This desktop app's going to come with additional speed. It's also going to come with additional features, and it's the place where you really want to organize Evernote. Even if primarily your Evernote usage is from your mobile device, you want to organize it on your computer and have that information pull through to your phone, which is going to be used more to reference and capture notes, not to organize them. So it's very important to download the desktop app, and then obviously, talking about the settings, there's some very important settings that you want to look at in terms of your desktop application for Evernote.
This is the sexy settings episode, Stacey. So unless we're going to talk about kombucha, which, oh my gosh, you need to come over. We just got a second brew we made. We're doing
fantastic.
Homemade because it adds up. $5
I have to
a
learn
bottle
how to
for the
do this.
Buddha brew.
I love it.
It's super simple. You just brew some tea and you throw some crazy SCOBY in there, and it brews itself. You can borrow some
definitely.
SCOBY. Ours is growing like crazy, so you can.
All right.
We can have sister kombuchas.
Perfect. Love it.
All right.
All right, so back to the preferences. Let's talk about, there are preferences that are unique to the Mac and to the PC or the Windows platforms. So let's start with what's in common, though. And the first thing and the most important thing is to understand that Evernote has a sync process. And sync is what allows any changes that you make locally on your desktop machine to be magically added to your account in the cloud so that you can then pull that information down from your phone or from any other device that you access Evernote on. So sync is an essential process, and it's also critical to understand that sync is not instantaneous. All right. So sync is not instantaneous. It does, however, happen at regularly scheduled intervals in the application. And those intervals are when you quit Evernote. So if you exit the application, sync's going to actually automatically happen. And when you open the application, and then within the software, it will occur at these designated timeframes. And that is the setting that you want to make sure is set to the shortest possible time. All right. And the shortest possible time in the desktop app is 5 minutes. And both the Windows and the Mac platform will have a sync tab in the preferences or settings area that you want to go to. And make sure that your sync your notes with Evernote is set to the lowest possible time, and that all sync settings for that particular tab are selected. You want to be sure that sync is working. It's essential, and it's going to make your experience so much better. Now, the reason why is you're making changes locally, and the reality is we're busy, and you move fast when you're busy. And so you make a change locally, you take a phone call and you race out, or let me use an example I use all the time. I make changes locally to my errands list or my grocery list. So I decide what I have to go buy at Whole Foods, right? And I'm logging all of that in my computer at my home. And then I race out to the car and I want to drive down to Whole Foods and I want to pull up my grocery list on my phone. Now, even with the sync happening every 5 minutes, I might be in my car within 5 minutes. So I'm manually syncing. But if I wait, by the time I get to Whole Foods, that 5 minutes will have passed, and I'm able to pull that up on my phone because I've set it to every 5 minutes. So you want to be sure, notably, it's not, I think by default, the Windows machine sets it at 15 minutes. So you want to decrease that. Very important setting to look at.
All right. I just created a screenshot of that, so I will put that in the show notes. It's very simple. You just go to Evernote, Preferences, Sync, 5 minutes. Boom. And that's for a Mac. That's all I have.
Yeah, and I can help you out with the Windows one, but the Windows machine has a synchronization options area, and you want to enable all of the sync options that you see there. Instant sync, I'm not clear exactly what that does, but clearly I want sync to happen as fast as possible, so I'm all in on the instant sync, and things like synchronize in the background, etc. So the vocabulary can be different between the Windows and the Mac platform, but you want to be sure that 5 minutes is selected and that all of those are are selected as well. It will make your experience so much better in Evernote, and Sync has to work for you to love Evernote.
All right, all right. Well, I like it. So Sync is
That's
your
so very
friend.
Austin of you, by the way. All right, all right, all right.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. Nikita ran into him at the general store with goats and chickens, and he was buying some corn. So if you guys
That's
know,
awesome.
if you guys know who we're talking about, tweet us. I'm at ZW Sexton. What's your Twitter handle?
Stacey Harmon with an E, Stacey.
Stacey Harmon. All
Harmon.
right. Who are we talking about? All right, all right, all right. Well,
awesome.
and now I just want to say it again. So Sync is your friend.
Sync is your friend.
Here's the setting I love. Oh, well, and I know you're going to say this because you harp on it to me. If you are set the sync settings to the minimum amount possible, and then press that sync button, and it's in the upper left hand corner, and it's got some arrows. It's a circle with like made up of two arrows, and I'm constantly pushing that button because you got me in that habit of, okay, well, I want to go take this and put it on my phone, so just press that button up there. So get familiar where that is. Here's the one I love: View, Sidebar, Show Notebooks on Mac. Tell us about that.
So before we get to that, let me tell them how to get there, because what we've been talking about is in the preferences box, which is basically accessed via the options settings. What Zack is talking about are your view settings, and this is absolutely an area that you want to customize in terms of your Evernote desktop experience. So what I like to think of in terms of your Evernote desktop experience is it's your digital workspace. We want to configure it just like you would configure your physical desk. We want to put the stapler and the paperclip holder and all of those things exactly where they're going to be best for us to access them. And the view menu on both platforms is where you do that in Evernote. And as to Zack's point, and this changed his entire Evernote experience, the view menu, you want to be sure that your note list on the Windows machine or your and the vocabulary on the Mac is sidebar options. And then here we go. Keeping them straight for me is both. Sidebar options, notebooks is what you want to show, and then show notebook list. So there's two settings in the sidebar options on the Windows machine, and on the Mac machine. On Windows, it's view left panel. And you want to be sure that these items are appearing, because this is your primary navigation through the system. And without it, you can't see your data. You can't see your notebooks and your organization. You lose opportunity to have access to all of the notebooks that you have created, and which are very logical and human friendly, and give you the opportunity to kind of navigate through the system and support your use of search. So you're going to want both. When you're able to access your notebooks and see them in the interface as well as use search, you have a lot of power.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, and it's kind of hidden there. I was using Evernote for 3 or 4 years. It was a while, and what I did is what you can do is you can drag and drop notes and notebooks and put them on the sidebar, and it creates a shortcut automatically. And I think I stumbled upon that. I was like, ooh, man, now I can organize all these notes and notebooks that I want to access a lot more quickly and not have to use the search. So I was excited. I felt like an Evernote genius until a real Evernote genius came along and showed me about those sidebar options and how to have those notebooks up there all the time. The genius also showed me, and this is a Mac command, so you can maybe tell people the Windows command, Command J, which stands for jump, which allows you to jump into any notebooks that you want to very quickly. So I've got my in-process notebook, I've got my journal notebook, I've got my receipts notebook, and it just makes navigating around much quicker. So having the options of the shortcuts on the left hand side, seeing all of your notebooks, and you can maybe tell the difference between notes, notebooks, and stacks on the left-hand sidebar. And then knowing that keyboard shortcut to me made me feel like a superstar. The extra one that you showed me is Control-Command-M, which allows you to move notebooks very quickly too. So that's how it got quick.
Too.
And
that is how it gets quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the interface supports that too. So even if you can't see your notebooks fully displayed on the left-hand sidebar, because say you have too many of them and you have to scroll below the fold, you can still see that list and quickly filter it using those 2 key commands, which is brilliant. So look into both of those if you're a Mac user. If you're on the Windows machine, there's a little magnifying glass next to the notebooks button on the left-hand side that you can click into, and the same filter kind of comes up and lets you jump to that notebook. Or you can, it says there's a key command. I have a PC and the key command's not working. I might have something assigned otherwise to it, but play with that on the left-hand sidebar. With the little magnifying glass, it will appear when you hover over the notebooks button. And then to display your notebooks on the Windows machine, it's actually really simple. Beyond the view menu, you can just toggle the little arrow that's to the left of the notebooks button on the left-hand sidebar to expand that list. So I actually think Windows users are more familiar with it. On the Mac machine, you have to turn it on through the view menu. Or you have to like proactively right click on the notebooks button, and people don't think to do that. So yeah, it's really, really helpful. And I couldn't live without seeing those notebooks list. My ability to organize Evernote, and I keep 27,000 notes in Evernote. So my ability to like navigate through the system would just be lost or very greatly hindered if I didn't have those notebooks visible.
You've got an extra 0. and we can talk about this as another setting. I've got a little over 2,300 notes in Evernote, so obviously I've got some catching up to do. But I know that because of I believe that same, if you go to View, Sidebar Options, is that where it is? How do you get the number count?
Oh, yes. So very important. You want to display your note count that is in each of your notebooks, and you do that through the View setting on the Mac. View, Sidebar Options, and then Show Note Counts. So that's a toggle between Show Note Counts and Hide Note Counts. Super helpful piece of information to tell you. Right, when you get into workflow design, it starts to tell you how much data is in a notebook. And one of the roles of certain notebooks is as a holding tank to process information. And so to know that there's information in there is useful. Or to know that you might only have one note in a notebook. Maybe it's time to combine that with something else and delete that notebook. That's useful as well. So I advise, again, this is one of those little tweaks. Let's make sure we know how many notes are in each of our notebooks, and let's make sure our notebook list is displayed as well. And then, you can get into, it's not a setting, it's more of a workflow issue, but you can then get into creating stacks and organizing that data in a way that's going to support, your end goals as well.
Yeah. And stacks is just a series of notebooks, and notes is the smallest Russian nesting doll that we have to work with. Is just that's what it is. It's a note. It's a blank piece of paper.
This is how I like to look at it. There's 3 units that you can use to organize Evernote: notes, notebooks, and stacks. Notes are the base unit. Most people need there's so much we can do. Let me put it this way. There is so much we can do to organize our Evernote account by just understanding what you can do with an individual note. Very, very powerful. But notes can be grouped into notebooks. In fact, they have to live in a notebook. A note must live in a notebook. It's a software rule. And then notebooks can be grouped into stacks. So think of that as a filing drawer that you put your manila folder in. The manila folder would be a notebook. The filing drawer would be a stack. So those are the organizational units of Evernote. Now, I often get the question, isn't a tag an organizational unit? And my philosophy on this is tags are actually a find feature, because you can assign tags to notes. You cannot necessarily change their position or organize with them, but you can find and retrieve based on tags. So that's not an organizational unit. It's a find feature in my view.
And the find feature, I don't use tags. And the reason is because you showed me this little hack how to self-tag things. Is if I was searching for a note, which I still use the search function because it works so well on Evernote, and it didn't come up, when I eventually find it by looking through a folder or a stack and see where it eventually is, I take what I searched, what I thought I would put there, and I write it in the note. And that's essentially my tag. So an example might be, actually, I was looking for the note when we first had this conversation. We made an outline of it, and it didn't come up right away. There was another Stacey Harmon note that I had, so I made Stacey Harmon and made a little indication that this is a podcast outline that we had created together. So now in the future, if I ever need to find this when I'm creating the show notes, for example, I know my search will be able to find it, in addition to being able to know that it's in the able stack and in the recorded notebook, essentially. And just to go back to the number tweak that we made, it's a surprisingly helpful indication, because I had no idea that I had 745 journal entries. But it's like, oh, cool. And then you would find little stacks that have like 3. It's like, well, maybe I can combine that, or little notebooks that had 3. Maybe I can combine that somewhere. And the big one, when we were chatting last time, is the in process. So if I email something to Evernote, it goes into this one folder. And if it's basically, it's my holding ground. Think of it. You just used a nice analogy for office supplies. So it's like a paper inbox where everything goes until I've filed or sorted it. I had no idea I had over 100 things to process in there until that number popped up. I was like, oh, okay, it's time to clean house a little bit. So that's definitely it's a harder one to find in the Mac, but now, hey, you know it. It's just go to View, Sidebar Options, and click on Show Note Count, and you can now enjoy knowing how many notes you have, which is
well.
fun.
And can I just follow up with 2 quick things on what you've said? Number one, the tag issue. What you're really saying is the entire note, it can be a tag. As long as that word is in the note, you can find it. So there's no need for the tag. And that's really a light bulb moment for people who are struggling because they're adding hundreds of tags to a note, so that's a great productivity tip. And then the other is that on the inbox, you were talking about a processing box. That is the other setting that I highly advise all users to do. Every account Every Evernote account comes with a default notebook, because I highlighted earlier, a note has to live in a notebook. So they give you one notebook when you first join Evernote. And I advocate renaming that notebook to .inbox, so that the dot is a naming convention hack. And I have a blog post on this that Zack can add to the show notes that tells you everything you need to know about how to name your notebooks for this purpose. And you can then have that inbox be where you capture new notes from both inside and outside Evernote, and then process or file them at a later point. And renaming that notebook from first notebook to .inbox will just make a huge amount of difference in terms of your mind understanding where your work is and where it is in progress, and then being able to see those notebooks on the left-hand side. It reemphasizes that as well.
Yeah. Let's let the blog post talk about the naming conventions, because it's a very important piece of it, but this is settings. So you can do your naming conventions later, but very important piece. So I encourage you to go to the show notes and check that post out there.
Okay, great. Do you want to move on to the mobile device then?
Yeah, let's move on to the mobile.
Okay, so those are many of the key settings on the desktop, but then obviously you're going to want to use your Evernote on your phone or your tablet. And both the Android, iOS, and actually Windows have Evernote apps that you can download and want to look at. And it will be no surprise that I want you to look at your sync settings on your phone as well. So I want you to check out your sync settings, and you're going to want to put that to the shortest possible time. And Evernote's actually moving to kind of like a background sync process is my observation on the mobile devices. But it is possible to make sure that that is as short as possible, and you want to do that. So I'm just pulling up my settings on I have an iPhone, and there's no longer a sync specific location to set that at. But you at the top can choose in the settings, which are located in account, which is on the lower right-hand corner. And then you can get to the settings area from there. And you can see at the top, you can choose to sync on Wi-Fi only. I turn that off. So that's important because that will make sure that syncing happens more frequently. And then if you back up a screen back to the account main page, you might need to scroll down a little bit depending on how large your screen size is, but you'll see that there's a sync now button, and that is where you can manually sync at any time. So that sync process is happening, every time you open and close the account, and it is also likely happening in the background. But if you want to force a manual sync from the iOS device, you can do that right there from that screen. And then you can also see on the iOS, there's a settings area, and you can comb through these settings. What I advise you to do is look at all of these. And instead of going through all of them, Zach, what I would advise is this. Hunting and pecking through this area will generate often a lot of pop-up menus that say, Evernote wants to be able to access your location. Evernote wants to be able to access your calendar. Evernote wants to be able to access your camera, your phone, these kinds of things. Often that freaks people out. And they just click through and say, no, 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 no. Evernote does not work magically unless you say yes, 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 yes. So I encourage people to allow for all of those permissions to be assigned to the Evernote app. And this is a really key tip to really having the information collected that makes find and retrieving notes in the future so powerful. So don't be scared of those. Evernote's using it in order to assist in the note creation process and allowing you more metadata to be associated with your note and to make the process of capturing notes much easier. So you can create a photo note if your camera is connected to Evernote, for example. And then you can create location-specific notes and be able to search based on location if you have that location services turned on. And all of this becomes immensely powerful as your Evernote skills improve.
Awesome. Any other, because when we talked last time before the upgrade to the iPhone application, there was some good settings changes that allowed you to see your shortcuts as well as your, there we go, shortcuts, most recent notes.
So here's what happened. What they did is they've actually made an improvement that I'm a big fan of, and they took away the home screen on the Evernote app. Okay. In the iOS. Okay. So there used to be a home screen that we could customize, and that's what you and I went through last time we met. Now they take you directly to your notes. So it's quicker access to your notes. So what you need to be familiar with is if on the left-hand side, you're going to see your notes, and then at the top of that screen, you can actually click on it to filter based on notebook.
Okay. So I'm at notes, and I see the search, all notes. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so it says all notes. And if you click down there, that's how you navigate to your different notebooks. And then they promoted the shortcuts to its own button, which is along the bottom. And now, much like on the Android device, you can see all the shortcuts that you had. You used to only get a preview of the top couple of shortcuts.
Yeah.
You could still see them, but you had to click through to that. Now it's all visible right at the beginning. So I think that this, once you're used to it or once you get familiar with it, it really is an improvement because it's getting you access to your notes right away. And that is parallel to the Android platform, which that's a benefit.
Okay, cool. Click the left, all notebooks. That's helpful because I was a little bummed. I was like, I organized my notebooks very nicely and I couldn't see them. I did like the update of just having a big green button where if you wanted to create a new note and that automatically goes into, you call it I call it my in process. What do you call the main funnel that everything goes? Inbox, yeah, .inbox. Yeah. So I liked that and it kind of looked a little nicer, but I was a little bummed about not seeing the notebooks, but hey, just a thumb click away.
That's right. So it's just one. It's still just one click, like it was before. So that's really the key.
Awesome. Well, any other little tips when it comes to the phone and putting the correct settings on there?
The main one is to look for your sync settings and then allow permissions. And then the last little tip I'd leave you with on the phone is because especially with this iOS upgrade, they give you access to your all notes really quickly. The sort order of the notes on your phone can matter. So in both the Android and the iOS, there's 3 little dots in the upper right-hand corner of the interface. And when you click on that, you can choose some options for how those notes are displayed. And what I found is that sorting by date updated tends to give you the quickest access to the notes that you're probably looking for first. Mm-hmm. Because you've probably been working on them either from your mobile device or your computer. And so floating those up to the top of your notebook list or your notes list can be really useful. So I would play with those and see if that really helps your productivity and quick access to the notes you're looking for.
Is there anything, because we talked about syncing LinkedIn, and I know there was a setting where if you connected, you allowed access to your camera. I think when you scan cards in. Can you tell us about that?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So if you connected LinkedIn at your account settings, it should pull through to your phone. But it's a good idea to verify that it did. And in your device, you want to go to your account settings and you want to go to the camera settings and then business cards. So under that, that's where you want to confirm that LinkedIn is indeed connected, and then choose to, now this is iOS specific at this point, but there's some great settings there where you can choose to save to contacts. So when you scan a card and it auto extracts that information, you can have it automatically save that information to your phone contacts. Huge time saver in terms of data entry, especially for those people who are in sales. And then you want to also turn on the always show feature, which means that you'll have the option as a user on a case-by-case basis. When you scan a card, do you want to send them a LinkedIn request automatically or not? And do you want to send them your contact information automatically or not? So turn both of those on because it gives you control. And then you want to see how that works because it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing how the technology can extract that information and then make your life in terms of data entry and connection with new prospects and contacts seamless.
Wonderful. Yeah, just huge time saver there. And before we part ways, Stacey, I want you to tell people you've been an Evernote ambassador, an Evernote consultant, a certified speaker. You've got.
I've written a book on Evernote.
You've written a book on Evernote. You basically work for the company. You're going to be speaking with them at South by Southwest. You don't work for the company, but you got a lot of connections, and you've been teaching this as a consultant for 4 years at this point.
Yeah, at least, right?
Yeah. And what you noticed as a consultant is you went through the same things over and over again. Settings was one of those, so we just went over all the settings together, and it was people would pay you hundreds and sometimes thousands of dollars to run through these, getting the settings right and setting up the right systems and learning how to use it correctly, using this powerful tool so correctly, especially if you're a small business owner or have teams that you want to work with and share information using Evernote. But now you've taken, over the last, I think, 5 months, you've really been putting a lot of time in this. You've taken all the information that you would say on the first 10 consulting calls, and you've put it into a course. So can you tell people how they can find out more about you, how they can find out more about this course? If you want to say anything about it. I have not yet gone through it, but I've seen you in the process of making it, and it looks fabulous. I've had the opportunity to get free consulting. So if you want free consulting from Stacey, you just start a podcast and she might agree to talk to you, or come to Austin and buy our kombucha. But in reality, you've really created something special here. So can you tell people about how to find out more about that?
Sure. Well, what I've done is I took what I was seeing as patterns in the skills that people were lacking in Evernote and were paying me a lot of money to teach them, and consolidated it into an on-demand video training course that I'm calling Radical Productivity with Evernote. And it's a sequenced course where I walk you through what it takes to become an Evernote power user. And understand all of the elements that are required to really become radically productive with Evernote. And it's really the path I took over years and years and years, as well as what I observed are the common themes of what I needed to teach and what people needed to know about Evernote in order to understand how it's this amazing tool and to really fall in love with Evernote as a primary productivity support to your daily life and live the way that I live, which is my life is centered in Evernote. I can work from anywhere because of Evernote, and there is amazing power in understanding the details of Evernote. So at harmonenterprises.com, Harmon enterprises.com, you can see more information about it, but I've created this course that's broken down into these it's 80 lessons over 7 modules. And that may sound overwhelming, except for the fact that each lesson is in bite-sized chunks. So it's between 3 and 25 minutes per lesson. And it walks through in a very linear fashion. It also has a course index if you're already fluent with Evernote that lets you hop to the lesson, right to the lesson and skill set that you want to learn. So I'm really proud of it because as Zack said, I've been working, it took me 4 months to sequence the curriculum, and I'm teaching all the platforms. I'm teaching Mac, Windows, iOS, and Android. So it's not favoring one platform or the other. It's showing you what you need to know for the devices that you're on. And I'm taking what it usually cost people $2,000 to $3,000 to learn by hiring me and putting it into a course. So I'm excited to have people part of that.
Oh, wonderful! I love the index that you've created. I have seen that portion of it, and it's great because I could just see right there. Okay, here's some gaps in my knowledge, and I'll go right there and fill those. It's something a lot of online courses I think fall a little short. They just assume everybody wants to go through the whole thing, where in reality you probably have a few things that you want to learn first before you go through every little piece of detail. But then it'll always be there for you to use as a on-demand consultant, which is, I don't think that those are out there. So awesome job with that, Stacey. Congratulations on being nearly done. By the time this podcast goes live, it will be 100% done. I believe you've already even gotten some pre-sales too. So that's always a fun thing, is making money before you've even finished everything. But it's all there. You're actually taking a break. I really appreciate it today from recording some videos and to talk with me today. So thank you so much, and hopefully we'll get to hang out this weekend. There's some location independent friends I want to introduce you to.
I'd love it. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk Evernote with you.
Absolutely. Take care, Stacey. I'm recording this outro in that note I mentioned 4 or 5 months ago when I originally recorded this episode on my iPhone with the original audio still intact in the location where I could easily find it with search. Evernote's such a cool tool. All the tools that we have in the information age are amazing, but Evernote is one of the most ubiquitous. And if you're somebody who feels like you have your notes and your pictures across multiple areas, you got some in Dropbox, some on your external hard drive, a few in Google Drive, some in Evernote, and some of your to-dos maybe in your email inbox, this is going to be a really great training for you. If you go to zacharysexton.com/learn-Evernote, Stacey shows you how to centralize and digitize everything in your world using Evernote. She mentioned that one-off in the episode, and I thought that was very interesting. She really expanded upon that idea. I've had the chance to watch the presentation once, and I learned a ton, and I know she's made some updates since then. So I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you guys. If you go to zacharysexton.com/learn-Evernote, you can sign up in probably 24, 25, 26 hours. So it's going to be tomorrow, Thursday, August 3rd, 2017. If you are listening at a later date, I apologize, you missed it. I'll be sure to let you know when Stacey does one of these again. Thank you so much for tuning in this week for the rebroadcast of Sexy Evernote Settings. Next week, we will have a new episode with Mad Singers. He's going to tell you about how to hire and get the most out of your first virtual assistant. Mads is the guy that I hired my wonderful virtual assistant from, Debbie, and he uses both psychology and skill set as well as
global arbitrage. Everyone lives in the Philippines, and it makes, with the cost of living a little bit lower, makes things a little bit more affordable. So I'm really looking forward to getting that episode out. A lot of people have been asking me about virtual assistants. I'm like, you need to wait for this episode with Mads. It's going to be wonderful. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next Productive Wednesday.